So this is a story we talked about yesterday, and we've been talking about on and off for the last few weeks. Prairie Village and the city council has moved forward with a $30 million project to build a new city hall. Now, you might say, well, why? There's so much going on. Prairie Village is a smaller community in the Kansas City area. Why does this matter? To me, this is part of a bigger story where these municipalities, specifically in Johnson County, but all over the metro for that matter, are just spending and spending and spending. They're not being fiscally responsible. And this is just one of the latest examples of that right in Prairie Village. It was a 9-2 vote by the city council this week. And one of those no votes on the 2 side was Lori Sharp. She joins us in studio on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM and streaming on the free KCMO Talk Radio app. So, Lori, good morning. Thanks for being here. And first question, how surprised were you on how lopsided this vote was on Monday night?
Good morning, Pete. Unfortunately, I can't say I was surprised. I do feel like the votes were already well known. Nick Riddell and I both voted no on it. I believe if Inga Selders had been there, she would have voted no. But otherwise, this has been being pushed through, jammed through without a lot of the public being listened to, completely being ignored, quite frankly. And yeah, I wasn't surprised.
So this brings up, I know that you were lobbying for what? Basically this $30 million City Hall project to go to a vote of the people. Is that what you wanted to see happen?
That's all I wanted. I have said all along, if this is such a great plan, if this is something the people will really love, then let them vote. Or quite frankly, I can live with what the people want. It just isn't right that these 12 council members, who some of them are only going to be on for a few more months, that they're binding the residents to 30 years of debt. Mm-hmm. You know, I can live with what and would gladly embrace, honestly, whatever the residents want. But it just needs to be a majority of the residents. They need to have a say in this. It's $30 million. It's the largest bond that Prairie Village has ever taken on in history. And it's the taxpayers' money. Mm-hmm. They have a right to vote. They have a right to be heard.
So listen, I totally agree and sympathize with you. The other side of this is, where do you draw that line between saying, hey, you elect council members to make decisions and do jobs like this? Where do you start saying, hey, we're going to have a public vote on this issue or that issue? I mean, where do you draw that line if suddenly we're voting on everything? What's the point in council members who are then elected to theoretically make these decisions?
That's a great question. We do elect these people. The city hall was never part of the election because they didn't run on it. It wasn't, an idea at that time. And the fact that most city councils don't bind their residents to, or their future councils to projects or spending or ideas to the next council. They don't bind them. They act with what is today. Also, the most important thing to me is KSA. I'm going to give you a number here so people can look it up if they want to. But it's 13-1024A is a Kansas statute that actually requires cities of the first class to allow their people to vote on bond issues. Now, in 2009, our city did a charter ordinance, which is a constitutional amendment, opting out of that and taking the right away from the residents. But they did it on a small project. In 2016, they did it on $3 million city lights. They said, this is a small project. It won't bind the residents. It'll actually be faster for us. So let's do this charter ordinance. The people won't vote. They only added the word street light to it. Mm-hmm. And so then the people didn't vote on that. Little did the council members voting on that realize that they would hide behind this charter ordinance and stop future voting on other projects. I've talked to several council members. They had no idea of the long-term implications. And when you talk about other cities, almost all the other cities in Johnson County use the same bonds council, mm-hmm. and they are all being led by by different charter ordinances, taking away the right of the residents to vote. Now, most cities have kind of guardrails. They'll say something like $1 million or $3 million, and then after that, the residents get to vote. Prairie Village doesn't have any kind of guardrails. They say, we want to bond people on $100 million. We can do it under this charter ordinance, and they don't get to vote. So Inga and I tried to repeal that charter ordinance, and we were told things like, oh, it can't be done. There's not enough time to put it on the November ballot, which that's 5 months away, so that's not true. And so they voted again 9-2 to not allow this charter ordinance to repealed. Had they repealed it, the residents could have voted. So those 9 votes.
Would the resident vote have been, and Lori Sharp, Prairie Village City Councilwoman, is here, would the vote have been just a recommendation, or would that have been the official decision?
It would have been the official decision, because if you repeal Charter Ordinance 28, it goes back to the Kansas statute, which requires the cities to allow the residents to vote. That would have been the law.
How much has the Prairie Village budget grown the last few years?
Oh, my gosh. Well, I brought this today. I have a sheet of paper that I'm showing you. So
I see it here, yes.
They blame the county for increasing your assessment. On last meeting, they blame the state. It's all about spending. Prairie Village has a spending problem. In 2016, we took our budget to the county and said we are going to need $5.9 million to operate our city. 10 years later, they took this year's budget to the county and said they need $12.3 million. That's 107%, over double increase in our spending for our little city that hasn't grown and hasn't increased in population.
So, this is the problem that we're seeing in Overland Park, Olathe, Lenexa, you name it, and, of course, you in Prairie Village. All these Johnson County municipalities are just spending, I believe, recklessly. How did we get here?
It's very scary to me how much we're spending, and I worry about the people that are having a hard time paying their taxes and living in their house, because I don't see any control or any guardrails being put in place. In fact, on Monday, we had a former council members had a debt policy limit, how much the city could spend and that we could afford. And so at this point, we were at $9 million as of Monday. And one night, they quadrupled that, and they increased our debt ceiling to over $36 million of what Prairie Village could spend. And what each citizen then went from $1,000 per capita to $3,800 per capita of debt that they're going to carry.
Wow. It just seems to me like for Prairie Village, 20,000 people landlocked, you can't grow it any more than it is unless you start growing up, right? And is that maybe why there's a big push on the apartment front?
Well, that in my mind, no one has said that to me, but that's, you get more density, you get more people in there spending money, paying taxes, and, we all live then on top of each other so that we can afford all the reckless spending that's being done at City Hall.
Seems to me, if there is a silver lining in any of this, maybe people become more engaged in their local city council races, because that's what's got to happen here. People have to wake up to this stuff.
I can't work any harder than I am, but I'll tell you, the residents have really partnered with me. It is the truth so far. It feels like the current council isn't listening. But if I look back, since November, I have received almost 350 emails. A citizens group did yard signs. They ran out after 500 yard signs. We have overflowing meetings of residents coming in. It is very frustrating because all these people write and no half the time they don't respond to them, or they just frankly don't listen. It's months and months of residents working so hard to say, please listen to me. We are being overtaxed. And the city council isn't listening. And in November, that's what I'm solely focused on, is trying to get council members that will actually listen and respond to the needs of the residents.
So last thing, this City Hall, this $30 million City Hall project that you voted to pass, not you, but the council voted to pass this week, you can't do anything till March, as I understand it, because you're taking over a church that's still in use. So just to be clear, it sounds to me like the timeline on this was rushed by the city council to jam it through, even though you can't break ground on anything for basically 9 to 10 months, correct?
In my opinion, it felt very rushed. We hadn't been discussing a lot of these items. All of a sudden now, right in the middle of the budget process, we're increasing our debt ceiling. We're looking at a design concept in one meeting that we hadn't seen any designs on. They vote for the bond. We're going to sign a contract in October. All of this is done before the November election. All of this is done before 6 of the council members are being changed or being elected on, and only 4 of them aren't even running.
Wow.
So 4 council members aren't going to be there in 4 months, and they just voted the residents for 30 more years. And on top of that, the building is occupied till the church until March of 2026. So I don't know what the rush is. They should have put it on the November ballot for the residents to vote while we were voting on the council people, and let the residents decide.
Would have been nice. Lori Sharp, Prairie Village City Councilwoman, is here on KCMO. Thank you, Lori, for your time as always. We appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for highlighting this.
You bet. Lori Sharp on KCMO Talk Radio.